Hi, this is the Social Jello with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Jello with Angelo show.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Social Jello with Angelo podcast. I'm here with our legal advisor, Anthony Miele, to talk about how and who owns the Gracie logo. But this conversation is going to transcend outside of jiu-jitsu and go into owning a logo for your martial arts school in general. What are the ins and outs of copywriting your school name, school patch, whatever it is that you have? I'm
Trademark.
not a trademark, so that's why he's here. So this is go ahead and tell everyone your background real quick and what kind of law you practice.
My name is Tony Miele. I practice intellectual property law, patents, trademarks, and entertainment law. I used to work at the Patent and Trademark Office years ago.
So there you go. And he's my legal advisor, and he's the resident legal advisor here on Social Jello with Angelo podcast. So I'm gonna say a bunch of stuff, and I'll probably fuck it up, and then Anthony will come in and tell you the legalese in a way that you can understand it. So let's start with the Gracie logo. Let's start with some juicy underground stuff. So as you know, I do interview a lot of people, and I have interviewed people from different Gracie branches. And one of the questions I'm always asking myself, and you saw this on the thumbnail, you see the Gracie Baja logo, you're going to see maybe the Carlson Gracie logo, depending on what I can find. There's a bunch of different logos for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. How is it that they all can do this without getting sued? Well, here's my underground story, and then we're going to come up because Anthony did some research on real cases, and we're going to break that down in a little bit. But according to what's being said by the actual practitioners in the art, along with the original logo, the Gracie logo that we all see now, it became to be owned under one specific person. And I'm not going to say his name to, again, avoid legal issues, but one of the Gracies came up with the official logo in Brazil. And that logo was used in the Humaita Street School in Brazil, which became known as the Gracie Humaita. I'm sorry if I'm totally butchering the Portuguese here. But this is just what people say.
What does it look like? What does that logo look like?
I'm not going to bring it up to avoid any issues, just in case.
Okay.
If you want to know what that looks like, look it up. But it does look similar to these kinds of logos here. And I'm not going to say this is the logo. I'm just going to say that this is what it kind of looks like. It's not the logo. It may or may not be the logo. Let me say it that way. I'm gonna protect myself. Does that protect me before I say that? Am I protected?
I mean, I don't think you're could be liable for anything.
All right, so my lawyer said it's okay. Here we go. So
yeah, I think you think that's one of the
that's why you're here. So these are the different kind of logos, and I'm talking about, this isn't the logo, but this is like the design, the triangle, the G.
Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
And this is Pedro Sauer, but
yeah, his is different than the other one. Yeah,
his is different. So how does that work? Now, as the story goes, let me bring up my information here. As the story goes, there was a few, not just one, but there were several lawsuits that came up. And these lawsuits came up, and this goes with some of the stories I've heard about the Gracie name itself, that the Gracie family said that if you're in the family, you can use the logo, you can use the name, if you're part of the family, and if you're related to the family, if you're given permission by the family. I'm sure you're shaking your head already maybe about this, but either way, one of the members of the Gracie family sued everyone for the copyright using the logo and the Gracie name. The Machados were originally Gracies because the mother was a Gracie. However, they broke up. And when they split, the mother and the kids kept the Gracie name when they split. So the mother left the Gracie name, going off of how they all agreed, hey, if you're a Gracie, you can use the name. They broke up, but they kept the Gracie name, like, after they broke up, which makes sense. I don't know whose kids are whose. So like, I don't know whose kids are whose. If they're still your kids, you can still use it. But the mother kept the name, even though she got divorced. She decided to keep the name
Mm.
from the marriage split. Um, Either way, so the only schools that have the official logo are Gracie Humaita. However, it's 10% different. The logo wasn't so much the issue as much as the Gracie name being used. That was the bigger issue that they had. So it was again not so much the logo, but using the Gracie name. Um, one of the
Some,
members, one of the members of the Gracie family that I'm not mentioning the name of to avoid problems, has went to law school and used those skills to make money. And now there's been issues between that family member and another family member who also runs a large community online. And I'm not mentioning any names. And if you're just a person, you know who I'm talking about. And he surrounds himself with big business names and a legal team. And this is how this kind of stuff happens. So the original thing was done in Brazil, but now this art was brought to the US. Now, that's the background. There was also been stories, and I'm just telling you a bunch of hearsay, and then you're going to come out and you're going to talk about the cases. But this is what the Jitsu guys talk about. They also talk about people who married Gracie family members who were women and took on the Gracie name just to have the Gracie name. Because again, having the Gracie name is important for you. So if you're a jiu-jitsu guy and you marry one of the Gracie's daughters or granddaughters or great granddaughters, however that works, they would take on the Gracie name to say they're teaching Gracie jiu-jitsu.
like royalty.
Yeah, kind of like royalty. All right.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
what did you find?
Okay, so I found a case that tells an interesting story, but we should step back for a minute. Just because you have a name doesn't mean you have trademark protection to the name. And when you initially try to register like a name, an actual family name, the Patent and Trademark Office is going to give you a hard time. They're going to say that it's descriptive of that family name. So you have to acquire meaning, secondary meaning, where that name now is associated with a product or a service in order to be able to get a registration for that name. The term Gracie Jiu-Jitsu altogether, my understanding, there's not a huge discussion in this case that I read, but it's my understanding that it's generic. In other words, it's like saying baseball. It's something that you're identifying because that's what it is. And I actually have a similar understanding about Kaju Kembo, which is that's what it is. It's the style. It's what we do. So it's not a trademarkable term. It's generic. It's like what's a term that used to be a trademark and became generic? Vice grips. You familiar with vice grips?
Yeah. So
that used to be a trademark, and then it became generic because people were using it to describe what the item is instead of using it as a trademark. So when people say Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, they're talking about a specific type of art, and that is not protectable as a trademark. And then there's a case that involved that, and that's what they held in that case. That's what the jury held in that case. So that's my understanding. I could study that some more, but my understanding right now is that's the case. But you can use the term Gracie in connection with other designs and with other words to get trademark protection. There are 209 trademark files at the Patent and Trademark Office that have the term Gracie and martial, like martial arts, in as a service or a product associated with the Gracie word. And they're all different marks. So let me give you some examples. These are registrations. One is Gracie Elite Plano, LLC. No, I'm sorry. No, the mark is just the triangle. It's a variation of the triangle. And it says Gracie, and it's owned by Gracie Elite Plano, LLC. Another one is, another registered trademark is Gracie Bullyproof. Gracie Bullyproof, and that's owned by Gracie Intellectual Property LLC.
Let me just connect, and I can show these, right? There's not. You said already. I can show this stuff. It's not.
Yeah, you can show them. Yeah,
Okay.
there's no
Okay.
violation
Oh,
if you
okay.
show these.
So this is the Gracie Elite one right here.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily the registration.
Oh, and this is
That's not
Australia
the
too.
that's not the registration I'm talking about. So I don't have these pictures. I can pull them up,
No, it's okay. It's okay. Keep
but
going.
I can describe them. So there is a triangle in this one registration, and there's a triangle type of mark like design. It's a little different than the one you showed. There's another one. Gracie Bullyproof is just the words Gracie Bullyproof. That's registered. And it's registered by a company called Gracie Intellectual Property LLC. I don't know who owns that. It's presumably somebody in the family. There's another mark. This is out of 209 results, right? So there's 4,000 or 5,000 trademark applications or registrations that use the term Gracie for various products. I don't know. It might be soap or something. Who knows? But if you just put the term martial in there and you limit it to martial or martial arts, there's 209. Another example is Helio Gracie. That's owned by Horian Gracie. Another one is Gracie Gear. That's owned by Gracie Intellectual Property LLC. And then another one is, which this one, the Gracie Baja with the triangle. You can pull that one up. I'll tell you if it's the same one that's in the registration. And that's owned by Carlos Gracie Jr. Inc. He is an incorporated company. That's the triangle. So just to give us some, a few examples. So the story I have, this is from this case that I read, is it's my understanding that Carly Gracie is a cousin to Horian Gracie. Horian Gracie is the oldest son to Helio Gracie. And I think he's like in his late 60s, early 70s now. In the early 1970s, Carly Gracie came to the United States first, or certainly came to the United States before Horian Gracie did.
1974, according to the article I'm looking at.
According to the case that I read, it's the early 1970s. That's the way the judge characterized it. Actually, it does. It says as early as 1974. Yeah, in the case. So Horian came in the late 1970s to the United States. They were both teaching the Jiu-Jitsu, and Horian established a nationwide franchise. So he was a lot more successful than Carly, at least according to the way the case characterized it, the way the judge characterized it. And then what happened was in 1989, Horian registered his mark. So he has a registration to actually to two marks, I believe, to this triangle design. And it's a particular version of the Gracie triangle design that is I drew a picture of it. Yeah. So it's different than the Gracie Baja one, but it reminds me a little bit of the way the lines are. The triangle comes up, comes across, and then it comes up again, and then it comes down a little bit. And then it says along the side, Gracie, underneath it says Jiu-Jitsu, and inside there are two standing grapplers fighting each other on the inside in like a cartoonish kind of version of people fighting each other.
And that was Horian? That was Horian's?
That's Horian's.
Okay.
That's Horian's triangle design. Yeah, that's the triangle design. So he registered these marks, and in 1994, Carly sued in 1994. You found the mark, the design?
Yeah, because it's got him right there.
That's it right there, yeah.
That's it right there.
That's it.
Let's move ourselves right here, right? That's it right there. That
Yep.
one. Okay.
Yeah. So it's close to the one that I was looking at. So in 1994, Carly sued Horian, and he sued him for all kinds of things. Cancellation of the mark. He said it was a fraudulent registration. He said that that Horian was infringing his trademarks under his common law trademarks because his marks are not registered. Horian was using, by the way, he was using the mark. I think what Horian was doing, he was calling his Carly was calling his Gracie. He has his Gracie, but he also had some variation of the triangle design that he was using. So that'll get interesting a little bit later. So Carly sued Horian. He said Horian was infringing his marks. He said all this other stuff like unfair competition, false advertising, a number of different claims. And then Horian responded saying, denying those, and then he counterclaimed for trademark infringement. So 3 years later, after 3 years of litigation, the district court granted summary judgment to Horian for a number of issues, and then the remaining issues went to the jury. So there was a jury trial. After the jury trial and after going back to the judge, the district court held that Horian can get an injunction against Carly. So you can basically say Carly cannot use the triangle design, can't continue to infringe with the triangle design. Carly has to pay Horian $108,000 for the infringement. The court awarded $620,000 for attorney's fees. So Horian spent $620,000 in attorney's fees, at least according to that number. And the court held that Carly infringed the triangle design logo. The court held that Horian's mark, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, is not valid. And I believe the basis for that is that it was generic. It was based on evidence that was presented to the jury. And the jury found, and the court upheld this, that the infringement was willful, which is what led to the attorney's fees award. The appellate court, because I was reading the decision by the appellate court, the Ninth Circuit appellate court, and they pretty much upheld all those things except for the attorney's fees. They said that you had to go back to the trial court, and they had to apportion that because some of the claims in the case were not trademark claims. And the federal trademark law that applies to this says that you can give attorney's fees, but only for that part of the case, not for the other issues. So they got to go back and relook at that. Carly won on the defense to Horian's assertion that Carly infringed Gracie Jiu-Jitsu because that was invalid. So he won, and then Carly wanted attorney's fees because he won that. And then the court said that not so fast. We're not going to give you attorney's fees. It's not obvious that Horian was unreasonable in fighting that issue in court. And so the way this fits into context, which I thought was interesting, is that early on in the case, the court said that Horian was actively enforcing his trademark rights using litigation in several cases, in several instances before this case. And then it's also known that after this case, Horian has pursued trademark litigation against different entities. And there's at least one successful case I'm aware of. In 2011, a decision came down after 2 years of federal litigation against a clothing retailer called Black Silver Enterprises. And I think it was Gracie gear. I think they were using Gracie gear on some of their stuff. And I think Black Silver Enterprises argued that it was generic. But since it wasn't just Gracie by itself, it was Gracie gear. They upheld those trademarks.
So what's that mean? What's that mean? That they lost? Did the company lose or win? Like
Horian, it's implied that Horian had success because they settled on the eve of trial.
All right. So
After
in other
2 years
so
of litigation,
all right. After 2 years of litigation, the company settled out
they
of court with Horian. So technically, Horian won. So like, yeah, there's a difference. They
it's
got money though.
confidential. You don't know the exact terms
It's
of it, but
confidential, but
mhm.
for them to settle out of court means they definitely paid a certain amount
Yeah, and I don't think they're
of,
still using the marks.
and they're not using the
So
marks anymore. So they did it. So
right,
they ceased and desisted
yeah.
for using that particular with the two grapplers. Do you know if that's the case, or you don't know the details on that one?
I think it's those are specific gear, like clothing types of marks. So I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. So
I think
then
there are other marks. I think there
for
are other marks that Horian registered.
so for anyone putting up with the conversation this long already, that's not a Gracie guy. I'm going to bring this now into the context of Kaji Kempo, which is the art I practice. I am an MMA coach. I probably should have started that, but if this is your first episode with me, welcome to the show. I'm an MMA coach, and I'm also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, um, under under a lineage that is connected to Pedro Sauer, but my lineage directly, the person who signs my certificates is I'm through Joe Moreira, and the way I work is I'm an assistant instructor in that lineage. Now, even in that lineage, I'm told that if I want to use the logos, that I have to pay a certain amount of money to be able to use the logos. They're specific Joe Moreira Jiu Jitsu, but I am certified to coach Brazilian Jiu Jitsu under their certification program and stuff. Now, why is this? Why am I having this conversation? Because I'm a Kaji Kembo guy. And for all these people who are watching who are also Kaji Kembo guys, what happens with us is we coach various martial arts. In our martial art is baked in different martial arts. It's an acronym for karate, jiu-jitsu, kempo, and boxing, and kickboxing. So in that, when we get finished with our black belt programs, we kind of, for anybody who's watching for the first time, we kind of have a certification to teach martial arts in a very broad sense. So we teach, we'll have students that come in, they want to do a karate tournament. I'll coach them for karate tournament. For me personally, that doesn't happen as much. I have more MMA guys coming in. A lot of kickboxing and MMA is mostly what I coach. But when I start talking about Kaji Kembo, I gotta mention everybody in my community, and that turns into a big mixed bag of all kinds of arts because it just depends on the art that you focus on. So either way, you have a certification in this, you coach people in that. One of the issues that came up with me, and the reason I ended up going through the connections I have to end up under Joe Moreira through I believe it's Professor Escali, if I said the title right. Sorry if I got your title wrong. He's running his school out in Hawaii, was because I used to be in a different school, and I'm not going to mention the name. I probably shouldn't mention the name, right? Because that might get me in trouble.
I mean, it may make sense for you not to mention a name for whatever political or
Okay,
relationship issues.
all right, but not legal issues.
Legally, history is history. So
Oh,
if you're at a certain place, you can say you're at that place. There's nothing legally preventing you from saying that.
Yeah, but politically, I'm gonna do it for a political reason. I'm not gonna mention the school.
Like if I went to Harvard for 2 years and quit,
yeah,
I can't say I have a Harvard degree, but I went to Harvard. I can say that. Nobody can stop me
I have a few signed certificates through a big jiu-jitsu school that I used to attend. I'll say that. And for political reasons, I'm not going to mention them. And why am I bringing this up? Because as a Kaji Kembo guy, you will end up cross-training in other arts. You will end up, depending on who you are, you will end up as an MMA coach. Let's just take Kaji Kembo right out of this. Like, I don't know what the fuck Kaji Kembo is. Fine. As an MMA coach, you're going to end up studying a lot of different arts and getting a lot of different certifications, because just an MMA certification under a certain person just isn't good enough depending on the area that you're teaching at. To be well qualified, you might go out there. I've heard of people getting certified in Mayweather boxing mitt training, right? For as an example, you'll go out there and you'll get certified in a specific type of style to teach this. And when that's happening, you'll be under legal obligations while this is occurring. And for me, I ended up going under this big jiu-jitsu school, and they had two separate systems. They had an instructor certificate and a regular certificate in their ranking system. the instructor certificate had a lot of legalese that said that you can only teach at the school. You're not allowed to teach outside of the school. So I purposely did not go that route because I was already teaching as I walked in to the school because I was already an MMA coach. And this became a big issue 8 years later. They said it wouldn't be an issue, but then 8 years later, I have Instagram and I'm posting my students training, and they come up to me saying that I'm teaching. I can say Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is like baseball, that I'm teaching Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not going to say which specific Gracie school this was, but they said that I signed a contract, and they showed me my contract that said that I'm not allowed to teach their specific brand of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and that they looked at one of my Instagram videos and saw what was it? It was an Americana setup that I've been doing for years before I started training there. That so happened to be covered in class a few weeks ago, and the instructor. I realized the instructor, my instructor, was not looking at my Instagram to be like, "Oh yeah, that's great, good job." He was looking at my Instagram for that reason, to come after me one day. That's what it really was. He was monitoring me. And when he looked at my history, he saw me do an Americana setup that he taught in class, and I posted the video. I forgot when the video was posted. I can't even remember when the video was posted. It was posted like I don't even know, like when he taught it. It came up. One of my students did it, and I recorded it. And then he said that I'm teaching Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and that my contract says that's a violation of contract, and I can be in trouble. And I'm in Japan. And when he brought that up, my first instinct was to talk to you and talk to different people, and everybody just said, "Get out of there, just go right now. Don't stick around. Don't finish.
Not worth it."
Yeah, it's not worth it. Just and then I talked to him later, and I was able to talk him out of it because I was like, "Hey, are we having a conflict of interest? Because I'm not going to shut down my school because I'm on this like side quest to pursue deeper knowledge in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not going to shut down my entire MMA program because of this." We talked very early on, before any of this happened, what it would entail for me to become a satellite school under that system, and it was just way too expensive. And I don't run a huge school. I don't teach. Yeah, there's professional fighters who come in and out of here, but that's not my main goal. My main goal is to service a very small community, mostly families and kids, and a few professional fighters on the fight team. They're not even my fight team. They're another guy's fight team who come in and they use my facility. So I'm a gym owner. That's what I am. I'm a gym owner. I provide a facility for people to train at. And then the people post videos and they say they came here or whatever. So like I decided on my own, without any legal paperwork being served, to cease and desist. After he said there wasn't a conflict of interest, that as long as when he looks at my videos, he said it doesn't follow the pattern. There's like a specific pattern that Gracie school uses. He said as long as you don't follow that pattern and it's just regular jiu-jitsu, that it's not a conflict of interest, and to please not quit. I said, if there's a conflict of interest, I'll just go. And he said he asked me to please stay. But I just couldn't help the gnawing feeling that this was going to come up again. And that I signed a contract. And they have a piece of paper that I signed, and I'm there, and I'm training there. And there is a legal contract that I signed. So then that's why I decided to leave and go under someone else and be free of all that. Now, my question to you, for anybody who is an MMA coach who might be in a similar situation, they're training at another place to finish off a certification program, but their plan isn't to go teach at this giant franchise. They already have an MMA school. They already have a martial arts program, and they're just looking to add to their martial arts program.
Mm-hmm.
Is that legal? Can that other school say, hey, what you're doing looks like what we're doing, and you need to cease and desist, and since you signed a contract, we can sue you?
Maybe it's complicated. You can agree to anything you want to agree to. So that's the thing that complicates stuff like this, is these agreements can tie your hands, and you can agree to tie your own hands. and for various reasons, right? There's a big, I think it's federal now. I think there's it's the FTC. I think there's some prohibition on non-compete clauses in employment agreements. It's supposed to apply everywhere throughout the country. So now let's say it's illegal to have a non-compete clause, but you can still agree to things outside of that, and companies might still kind of tie your hands a little bit in terms of your ability to leave and take things with you. So you have to look at, if it's secret, if it's public domain, if they're teaching you something that's on the web and anybody can go look at what's on the web, there's an argument to be said that you can then leave that school and teach it outside of that school, because it's public domain. You don't need their permission. If you're teaching under their banner and you're saying you're Joe Gracie the third Jiu-Jitsu teacher, and you're using
which
that,
there is no such thing, by the way. But
I know, I just made that up. So assume there's a guy that, I could do this today. I could file for a trademark registration for Joe Gracie the third, and I might get a registration and I can start teaching. And let's say you teach the same technique, but you don't use the Joe Gracie the third banner. And people don't think it's coming from my trademarked business, then you can probably do that. But you might be able to agree not to teach my method of that technique. And I might say, well, I let you join my school, I let you study, I taught you, and you agreed in exchange for that you wouldn't go and teach that process or that method to people. It's kind of a drastic for you to kind of tie your own hands on something like that for the rest of your life, right? So I don't know if that's really enforceable.
Yeah, and then again, if I stuck around, I'm tying my own hands. But if I leave, I'm no longer tying my own hands.
Well, even if you stuck around, if you're teaching someone else and you're not putting that other name, associating that other name with it, then the only thing that ties your hands is what you're agreeing to, and that agreement still exists whether you're not there anymore or you are.
Wow.
Right? Because you've already agreed to that.
The
only problem is when you stay, the issue is when you stay, now you're learning 10 more things with their method.
Yeah.
And now so now it gets to the point where all this extra stuff and you kind of can't separate what you learned from there versus your own way of doing it.
Yeah.
So at some point it makes sense to just part ways.
Yeah. But what we also just said though is if you are one of those people that's up there and you want to get out of there, it sounds like they can hold that against you for life if they feel like it. Once you sign that contract saying that you're not going to do that, they can hold on to that contract for the rest of your life and come back for you whenever they feel like, if they feel like you're a threat.
They could try that, but I think there's a very strong argument, kind of like the non-compete clauses in various companies. There's a very strong argument that you should be able to do your profession. So if you're a martial artist and you teach martial arts and you now know jiu-jitsu or Gracie jiu-jitsu for that matter, there's a very strong argument you should be able to go teach that elsewhere. And if they're trying to prevent you from doing that because they have some proprietary way of doing it, there's a like, it's kind of weird. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for them to enforce that.
Well, what I'm going to say, even though you said it's okay, for my own political reasons, I'm going to say I do not tell people I teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I'll put that right out there right now. For political reasons, I'll say it, even though my legal advisor said that legally I probably don't have to do this, but I'll say it for political reasons. I haven't double checked that.
I haven't double checked that.
He hasn't double checked that either. So what I'm going to say,
but I do know that everybody's kind of agreed that if you call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
yeah, Yeah.
then it's basically the same thing, and that's what everybody calls it.
And so that's what brings me to the next step is, for me personally, I do not say I teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's the reason you won't see any pictures of Gracie's on my walls. You won't see any Gracie logos in my school. You won't see any of that. When you walk in, I mostly just have my pictures of me and the Kajikembo people that I've worked with. And those people have worked with other jiu-jitsu people too. I have a picture of the lineage under jiu-jitsu that I'm in, and my certificate, and that. And I have a picture of Joe Morera and just so that people.
For completeness on the issue of saying you teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, there are two other issues, and there may be other legal issues. One is called unfair competition. The other is called false advertising. So while the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu mark itself might be generic, a given Gracie entity might say that you're false advertising because you're saying that you're teaching with some affiliation with the family or something like that.
If I had their name, which I don't.
If you said you teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu,
yeah, if I do, which I'm,
so that would be,
and I'll keep it.
So
I'll keep
that's separate. That's separate from the trademark issue. The trademark may be generic, but they may have a separate claim under unfair competition and false advertising, saying that you're saying that you have some affiliation with them, which is a different issue. Which
again I'm stating I do not.
You don't do.
Yeah, I'm clearly stating I do not do that. I do not tell anyone I'm teaching Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. As soon as I left that school, that specific school, I never showed off those certificates. The certificates I got in rank, they were in the corner of my school somewhere, not displayed. And as soon as I left, I grabbed those certificates and I threw them in the trash. Like, I was like, I don't want anything, any type of anybody saying anything of any connection to that. And then when people ask me, historically, like you said, I'll say, yeah, I trained there for a while, and now I don't.
You should be able to say if you train there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then now I don't, and that's the end of that story. I took off every single logo that they made. They were like NASCAR. They made me tag up my gi, and I took off all the patches, took off every single one. There's a lot of them that I didn't realize until I had to worry about it. I didn't realize how many logos were on my gi. I was like, holy crap, it was like a lot of logos. It was like 6, and they even hit them on the belt. I was like, okay, I'm good. And then one day I'm getting ready to train and look at my belt. I'm like, holy shit, it's on the belt. Like they put a tiny logo at the corner of the belt even. I'm like grabbing a razor blade and ripping it off. So for any of you Kajikembo guys or any other martial artists that are cross-training, that are teaching, I hope you can walk away with, from these stories, an idea of how to legally protect yourself if you're in some sort of political issue. And another thing that I'm going to say before we go is, Anthony's told me this before. This doesn't protect you from being sued. That's the thing. If someone wants to sue you, they can sue you. And as you saw in that first lawsuit, it gets expensive. Winning or losing becomes expensive. So my advice to you, that from a non-lawyer perspective, is try your best to avoid it. Like if you can defuse, we're martial artists, and de-escalation. If you can de-escalate your problem before it gets to that point. So that's why I shared my story with y'all, because
you can hire a trademark lawyer, and then the trademark lawyer can do a search, and then they can assess whether or not you might run into a problem, because whenever you're doing any business, you're putting a shingle out, you're starting a business, you're providing martial arts services, or you're selling a product, you're going to use a name, and you really should work with a trademark lawyer and search to see what else is out there and try to assess the risk of adopting that name. And then you can also, depending upon the type of name you choose, you might be in a stronger position to make it hard for other people to use a similar name. So there's some tricks to that too. So
and then my advice is someone who doesn't want to deal with that. When you're trying to run a business, you're already going to be facing a lot of challenges. Just trying to run your business, if you're trying to open a martial arts school, run a martial arts program, you are going to be dealing with a lot of shit, no matter what. the more you can avoid legal problems, the easier and smoother running your business will be. And I'll just say that from I'm self-employed. Outside, I'd say martial arts is like my passion, but my main business, I'm self-employed. I run an English school, and I've never had any legal issues, and I never, well, hopefully I never will. And one of the things I'm always telling my wife is when it comes to clients, when it comes to public relations, if someone seems like the kind of person who seems like they're that kind of person, if you know what I mean, they're the kind of person who likes to sue. They're the kind of person, they ask funny questions, like stuff like about what kind of insurance do you have? They start asking these kind of questions. Yes, it's good to have insurance. Yes, it's good to be protected. But if you're dealing with someone who comes up and starts asking about contracts and fine print, this person, it's up to you if you want to deal with them. If it's beneficial
Could
to
be a
you,
warning. Could be a warning
for
sign.
me, it's always a red flag. It's always a red flag, and I send these people away every time. I say, okay, well, thanks for checking us out. I don't think the services we provide are a good fit for you. Or in the opposite case, in the martial arts world, I spent all that time wondering if I was in a conflict, if I was an issue of conflict of interest, and I didn't think about the conflict of interest for myself. And when I realized it was a conflict of interest for myself, I removed myself from the situation in a very non-dramatic way. I didn't make a big deal. I didn't come in and cuss out.
It made sense for you.
Like, I just very quietly sent an email saying, thank you for training me. Sent an email to all the other instructors that were there. Said thank you. Didn't tell them the details of why I was leaving. Kept it very quiet. And I just said, I'm you all helped me in my martial arts journey to this point, but I'm heading in a different direction now. And that's it. And the next step I'm taking is no longer a good fit for what I'm doing. The end. And that's my advice for anyone who's dealing with it. And yeah, a lot of you are fighters. You want to fight it out, go for it. If that's what you feel is right. But it's a lot easier just to quietly leave, leave or get away. The more you can not cause a big scene and split from some sort of drama, the easier it is for you later, because then you can focus on what you really want to focus on, which is teaching martial arts.
Yeah.
Well, this has been another episode of Social Jello with Angelo. I hope you were able to use that for some benefit to you. Like I said earlier, it's not just about jiu-jitsu. This conversation could be pertained to any type of copyright. So that information about the Gracies, I've seen this conversation for Taekwondo even. Probably should have opened that.
Yeah.
I've seen this conversation with Taekwondo guys. I've seen this conversation with Koji Kempo guys. I've seen this conversation had with a lot of different martial arts.
It's interesting with the story I tell, because Carly and Horian both could have. Horian already consulted with a trademark lawyer before, but I don't think Carly did. So he was doing what he was doing. He thought he was fine, and I don't think he got the best advice that he could have gotten. And the same thing with Horian, because he thought he was able to protect the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu name, but it turned out he wasn't able to. So, and at the very beginning, if they planned ahead of time, they might have been able to deter the other guy from doing what he did. So it would have prevented all this litigation. So some advice earlier on might have prevented it.
So there you go. If you think what you're providing is going to become some sort of big national sensation, definitely get legal advice.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Anthony, thanks for coming out. And then for my listeners, this has been the Social Jello with Angelo podcast. One of these once a week.
My pleasure.
About martial arts and several other topics. Catch y'all next time.